The moment the billionaire laughed, the entire restaurant fell silent, and no one noticed the waitress's hands trembling except the men who would soon wish he had never opened his mouth. The restaurant overlooked the Seine, its tall windows reflecting the soft glow of Paris at dusk. Crystal glasses chimed, linen napkins rested perfectly folded, and power sat comfortably at every table. At the center of it all sat Julien Moreau, a billionaire CEO whose name appeared regularly on business magazine covers, a man praised for his brilliance and feared for his sharp tongue. He had arrived late, as always, with an entourage that mirrored his confidence and fed his ego. When Elise Martin, the waitress, approached his table, she carried herself with quiet professionalism. She was 27, wearing a simple black uniform, her brown hair tied neatly at the back, her posture straight despite a long shift. She greeted him politely, her voice calm, eyes attentive. But Julien barely looked at her. He skimmed the menu with exaggerated boredom, then scoffed. "Do you even understand what this dish is?" he asked loudly, holding the menu up as if it were a joke. "Or do they just train you to carry plates?" A ripple of uneasy laughter passed through his guests. Elise froze for half a second, just long enough for the insult to land fully, then steadied herself. She had endured difficult customers before, but something about Julien's tone felt deliberate, almost surgical, as if he enjoyed cutting people down where they stood. She answered politely, explaining the dish in clear detail, but Julien interrupted her again. "Impressive vocabulary," he said, smirking. "For a waitress." The word waitress hung in the air like a verdict. Elise felt heat rise to her face, not from shame, but from memory. Late night studying. Her father's illness. Dreams paused, not abandoned. She had learned to swallow pride for survival, yet something in Julien's mocking gaze stirred a different response, one she had not expected. Instead of shrinking back, she smiled gently. "Yes, sir," she said. "I am a waitress. Tonight." That single word, "tonight," caught Julien's attention, though he dismissed it with another laugh. "Well then," he said, waving his hand, "make sure you don't spill anything. This suit costs more than you earn in a year." The table laughed again, louder this time. Elise nodded, turned away, and walked toward the kitchen. Her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. What Julien did not know, what no one in that room knew, was that the insult had just crossed a line she no longer feared defending. As she poured wine and arranged plates, Elise made a quiet decision. Not out of anger. Not for revenge. But for truth, and truth, she knew, had a way of exposing even the most powerful men. Hook, Chapter 2. When Elise returned to the table, her voice was calm, but her words were about to dismantle a billionaire's carefully built image, piece by piece. Julien was mid-story when Elise returned, boasting about acquisitions, mergers, and how he had outplayed competitors twice his age. His guests listened with admiration, some with envy, others with practiced flattery. Elise placed the dishes down precisely, then paused. "Sir," she said softly, "may I clarify something you said earlier?" Julien looked up, irritated. "Clarify what?" "You mentioned my earnings," she replied. "And my understanding of the world." The table grew quiet again. Julien leaned back, amused. "Ah yes. Did that offend you?" Elise met his eyes, not with defiance, but with composure. "Not offended," she said. "Just surprised. You see, I used to admire your work." That caught him off guard. "Used to?" "Yes," she continued. "During my studies in economics. I wrote my thesis on ethical leadership in multinational corporations. Your company was a case study." A murmur passed through the table. Julien straightened slightly. "Is that so?" "Yes," Elise said. "I even applied to your firm. Twice. I was invited to the final round. The interviews went well, until I asked about worker conditions in your overseas factories." Julien's smile tightened. "They never called me back," she said calmly. "My professor later told me the company withdrew because I was too idealistic." Silence settled heavily now. Even the river outside seemed to pause. Elise took a breath. "I became a waitress not because I lack intelligence, ambition, or education, but because life required me to support my family when my father fell ill. Because dreams sometimes wait, even when people don't." Julien opened his mouth, but no words came. "I serve tables," she continued, "but I also read balance sheets, study policy, and believe leadership should lift others, not mock them. You laughed at me tonight, sir." But I recognized fear behind that laughter. Fear. Julian snapped. Yes, she said gently. Fear that status matters more than substance. That without power, respect disappears. The guests shifted uncomfortably. One of them lowered his glass. Elise concluded, "You asked if I understood the dish." "I do. It's carefully prepared, layered, and meaningful, much like people. But only if you take the time to see beyond the surface." She nodded politely and stepped back. No applause followed. No dramatic confrontation. Just a long, uncomfortable silence where Julian's authority had once ruled unchallenged. Moments later, one of his guests cleared his throat. Another avoided eye contact. Julian stared at his plate, the reflection of the candlelight trembling like doubt. When the bill arrived, Julian paid without comment. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. "Elise," he said quietly, reading her name tag for the first time. "You were right. I was wrong." She smiled, not in victory, but in peace. That night, Elise returned home tired but lighter. Weeks later, she received an email, an offer, not from Julian's company, but from another firm whose CEO had been dining nearby and listening carefully. Julian Moreau's reputation never fully recovered. Not because of scandal, but because people began to see him clearly, and Elise learned something powerful: dignity does not come from titles or wealth. It comes from knowing who you are, and having the courage to speak when silence would be easier. Sometimes, the perfect reply doesn't raise its voice. It simply tells the truth. Thank for watch. Subscribe.